Welcome to Real Life Church Online. Wherever you're joining us from today, home, work, or on the go, we're excited to have you with us. Our prayer is that this message speaks to your heart and helps you take next steps in your relationship with God. At Real Life Church, we're one church in multiple locations, and while we're thankful for you connecting digitally, there's just something truly life-changing about worshiping together in person. We'd love to see you at one of our campuses in New Palestine or Greenfield, where you can experience the power of community and grow in your faith. Thank you for being a part of Real Life Church. Let's get into today's message.
All right, I'm come ready to preach today. Are you ready to listen? Are you ready to grow? Are you ready to hear from the Lord? If you're ready, say, I'm ready. Tell your neighbor, you better get ready. Tell your mama, she better get ready. All right, it's about that time. I don't know about you. I grew up in a time, some reason in like the late 80s, there was this theme. They started making movies about like coming to age movies, young people, and TV stories and sitcoms all seemed to have at some point the story of a 9, 10, 11, 12-year-old who got tired of living at home. And so he was gonna pack his bags, she was gonna pack her bags, and they were going to run away. And there was some sort of like a runaway adventure. And so every once in a while, when I would get fed up with my little sister, or I would be upset and mad at my little brother, or then when I would get in trouble for something that they did and blamed on me, I'm sure, I thought I might just run away, I might just run away. Now, I never did it. I never had the guts. I never had the guts to run away. Maybe you did. Maybe you packed a bag, you threw a couple G.I. Joes in there, a Cabbage Patch doll. You grabbed you a Hi-C juice box and you hit the road. But most people, when they did, you got to like the end of the driveway or over to your friend's house a couple doors down and you realize it's like dinner time and I'm hungry, So you go home, you're like, Mom, I'm sorry, I ran away. I'm sorry. And Mom's like, you ran away? I didn't know you went anywhere, That wouldn't happen today, right? I mean, if you leave the living room, Mom's like, okay, where's that on Life 360 where I'm trying to figure out, are you in the bathroom, honey? But back in the day, you threatened to run away. Maybe some of you actually did it. Maybe more than just, packing a G.I. Joe. You actually left home and had a tragic story. You were convinced that life would be better outside of home, and so you started running only to find how wrong you were, that life was actually filled with mistakes and failures and regrets. And maybe it hurts to think about it. Today, I want to not necessarily talk about a childhood runaway, but I want to talk about people who make the decision to run away from their spiritual home, to leave their spiritual home, to run from God, to decide to live life their own way, to walk away from their faith and from the family of God, to do life on their own. There's a story of a runaway in scripture. Jesus actually tells the story, and he's talking to a group of super spiritual, pious, I'm better than you, holier than thou type of people who were really upset because Jesus was hanging out with sinners. Yeah, look out somebody, hanging out with some SINNERSs. You know what I mean? And so he's trying to help them to understand the heart of the Father. And so in this story, it's important for you to know that the father in the story represents God, and the younger son in the story represents us. So just to make sure you got it, the father represents who? God. And the younger son represents us, all of us. So let's pick up this story. Jesus is telling in Luke chapter 15. He says, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger son said to his father, Father, give me my share of the estate. Now you just got to understand that in this culture, in this day, for this son to say, Dad, give me my share of the estate, it was like a slap in the face to Dad. It was as if this son were saying, Dad, I wish you were dead. Give me my money. And it's interesting because in the story, the father doesn't argue with the son. The father doesn't even sit down and say, can we at least make a pros and cons list here? The father doesn't argue or lecture. He actually just hands it over. He hands it over, and the younger brother takes the money, leaves town, and starts living it up. But for him to leave home, he's leaving more than just his dad's house. It's a picture of he's leaving everything his father stood for. He's running away from his father's beliefs, his father's values, the principles of the home, the way dad thought. Remember, the father represents God and the younger son represents us. Why do we run? Why do we run? I've been in ministry long enough to see all types of people run. You can't put them into a box. I mean, I've seen young people run. I've seen people have midlife crisis and run. I've seen older people run away from God. And it doesn't make sense to me because I don't think you just wake up one day and say, you know what? I think I'll just ruin my life, you know? Nobody ever sees the end of the road. Nobody's ever thinking about where this might end up. It's way more subtle than that. Some people run because they feel like God's boundaries are just too restrictive. They just try and control me, trying to hold me down, trying to make me live in this box. Other people run because they feel like they want to prove that they can do life on their own. I don't need all of this. Man, I'm a self-made man. Are you kidding me? You know what I've accomplished? You know how smart I am? I can do this on my own. Christianity's a crutch. Christianity's for the weak, or I'm a modern day woman. Don't try to put those old rules on me and boundaries on me. I can do without God and prove it. Some people run because they're hurt, deeply hurt. What's really hard is when they've been hurt by somebody who was supposed to be representing God, but they acted nothing like him. Some people run because of toxic relationships, peer pressure. Come on, let's go, let's do it, it'll be good. Why you live that? Why would you do that? Come on, this is so much better. There's so much more out here. Others run because of addiction. Some run because they're just tired. They just want to run into a hole and isolate themselves. But everyone who runs tends to think that what's out there is better than what they have at home. And the enemy's always right there whispering, come on, you deserve better. You're missing out. He's there to feed into those ideas and those thoughts. But here's the truth. When you run from God, you always lose more than you realize. What happens when you run? Jesus goes on with the story. He says, not long after that, the younger son got together all he had and he set off for a distant country. The first thing that happens when you run from God is you leave home. I know that makes sense, right? That would make sense. If I'm running away, then I'm leaving home. But what you may not realize is how much you're actually leaving behind. You see, when you leave home, you leave the safety of home. When you are at home, you've got God's safety and covering. God doesn't force you to stay, but when you leave and you walk out on him, you also walk out on his protection. When you leave home, you also leave the security of home. You say, well, Adam, what's the difference between safety and security? Security is more like a sense of belonging. When I leave home, it's like this place that I belong. It's my people. It's where I am and who I am and whose I am. It's that place. It's kind of like anytime I travel, whether it's other parts of the world or even just other parts of the country, every time I cross that Indiana state line or every time the wheels touch down at Indianapolis International Airport, I begin to sing to the embarrassment of my family, back home again in Indiana, and it seems like I can see. And everybody, they're like, oh my gosh, Dad, why are you doing? But the people around me are like, yes, oh yeah. They kind of like smile, you know. Why? Because there's no place like home. This is where I belong, where the roads are flat and they make perfect grids, right? Where I can get a tenderloin, these are my people. I am a people of the corn, you know? And so that's what happens when you leave home. You leave the security, that place where I belong. When you leave home, you also leave the blessings of home. My kids know that as long as you're in my house, there are blessings that come with that. And if you decide to leave, that's fine, but you don't get to take the fridge with you, right? There are blessings that come from being here under this roof. I remember when Kristen and I got married, the night before our wedding, we had the big rehearsal dinner, and then we went out to the bachelor party, you know what I mean? Bowling. It's what you do when you're a 20-year-old pastor's kid about to get married, But we got a little crazy. We went cosmic bowling. Come on, black lights, look out somebody. And so I got home that night, it's like 9:30. And I went down to the basement to my bedroom, and it's the last night at home. And I opened the door to my bedroom, and it's empty. The furniture's gone, the TV's gone, my closet is empty, and in the middle of my bedroom on the floor is a rolled up sleeping bag and a pillow. And I walked over and I kind of unrolled that sleeping bag and turned out the lights and got in there, and it's pitch black, and I laid in there and I'm thinking, why am I doing this? Who's gonna feed me? Who's gonna do my laundry? I've never done a load of laundry in my life. Who's gonna mow the grass at this new house? What's gonna, and I'm just in a moment of vulnerability, I'll tell you, I cried myself to sleep that night thinking, what have I done? Thankfully, 24 years later, Kristen feeds me and she does all my laundry and she even mows the grass. So it really has worked out okay, but there's blessings that come from being at home. And the same is true with God. He wants to bless you, but blessings come with obedience. And when you decide to do life your own way, apart from Him, those blessings stop. Finally, you also leave the love of home. You're telling me, Adam, that if I run away from God, He stops loving me? No. He will always love you. It's just you're not there to experience His love because you've walked away. You see, that should be enough to make you want to come home. The safety, the security, the blessings, the love of home. But if that's not enough, the consequences continue. There's a pattern of a runaway. And it's important for you to know this pattern because some of you have just recently kind of set out and said, I'm gonna do life my way. And maybe so far it's going good, man. Life is good. The money's flowing, the friends are there. Everything is sunshine and rainbows. But you need to know what you can expect down the road. Others of you might look back on your life. You've run and you've since come home. And when I talk about this pattern, you could go, yep, that was me. Others of you, maybe you've been gone for a minute and the shine is beginning to wear off. And as I talk about this pattern, you would say, that's my life right now. It's a predictable pattern. You can expect this if you run from God. What's Jesus say about the young man? He says that he squandered his wealth in wild living. In other words, he partied. He burned through the money. He made a bunch of dumb decisions. I don't know how you blow through all of your father's estate or half of it in that short period of time, but I picture like Billy Madison, Adam Sandler, laying by the pool, floating in an inner tube, empty beer bottles everywhere, Twinkie wrappers all over the place, hungover, squirting smiley faces out of suntan lotion on his belly, I don't know. All I know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is he had made some dumb decisions. You would say, well, that's not very smart that he would go and blow through his father's estate like that. No, it's not smart, but it's predictable. You know why? Because it's a pattern. When you run away, you make bad decisions. When you run from God, you make bad decisions. You end up saying, what was I thinking? Why did I do that? Why did I trust them? How did I spend so much money on this? And whether it's legal, illegal, damaging, to physical and everybody else will point a finger, or if it's internal, it's mindsets. We make decisions that compromise things that we know end up with consequences. And on the other side, we wonder, how in the world did I make those decisions? I thought this was supposed to be fun, and it was for a season. But then Jesus goes on and he says, after he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in that whole country and he began to be in need. All of a sudden, he's been living the life he dreamed of living, and then reality hits. Reality hits. And that's what happens. You see, sin is fun for a season. Going your own way can feel good for a while, and it can even go your way. And you can be making some money. You can be earning some stuff. You can be having some friends. You can be having a great time. But then someday the famine hits. Someday reality hits. Someday tragedy strikes. Someday life happens. And you look up and go, wait a minute, where are all my friends now? Wait a minute, my money can't buy me out of this situation. What I thought was supposed to bring me happiness is actually just been a craving for more and more and more and more. I didn't think I'd actually end up addicted. I didn't think I would actually end up in this position, and now he's broke, he's alone, and he's hungry. Because here's the truth about every person who's run from God. They lost. When you run from God, you lose. You lose. You lose things you didn't plan to lose. Some people lose money. Some people lose their marriages. I've talked to many people who've lost their families. I've sat with people who've lost their careers, their businesses, because they decided to leave the covering of the household of God. People who have lost friends, many have lost their innocence, some their reputations. When you run from God, you lose, and it's painful to watch. There's times I want to just scream at the top of my lungs. And so here's the younger son. He's hungry, no money, no friends. This wasn't the plan. That's the next step in this predictable pattern. When you run from God, your plans fail. Your plan fails. Every runaway thinks their story will be different. Every runaway thinks, no, I know better. No, not me, I won't go too far. No, not me, I'm above all that. I got this figured out. They think they can tell me, and I've listen, can I just tell you, it's like this. Every man is good with directions. We know where we are going. We are born with this inside of us. And so when Apple Maps came out to help all of the women, I thought that was very nice of them to do that. I'm not sexist, I'm just good with directions. And so we'd get in the car and Kristen would say, are you gonna put it in the map? I said, babe, we're going to the mall. I don't need to put it in the map. I know how to get to the mall. We get in the car. You're gonna put it in the maps? We're going to your parents' house. I know how to get to your parents' house. I know better than this computer. I got my own way, right? I know how to get there. Until the day comes when you don't put it in there and there's a 2-hour backup on 465, right? And now all of a sudden you're looking stupid. And your wife says, you didn't know that, did you? Why? Because Apple Maps sees everything. Apple Maps knows where there's traffic. Apple Maps knows where there's construction. Apple Maps knows where the flow is. Apple Maps knows the whole big picture, knows everything, what it has been like, what it's going to be like, what is the best time, what is all the things. And so me, when I decide, like the younger son, to say, I know better than the Apple Maps, one of these days it's gonna bite me in the rear, doesn't it? Right? And so now I get in the car and I try to go to work 6 minutes away and I put in Apple Maps. I'm like there's only one way to get to work, everybody. And now it's like, I just trust the map. And listen, it's the same is true spiritually. All it takes is thinking, I know my way. See, I didn't get any traffic. I know my own way. I didn't have any bumps in the road. I know my own way. There's no construction around there. And all of a sudden you hit, it didn't go the way that I had planned. Now all of a sudden I'm like, Jesus, what should I have for lunch today? Because obviously my plans fail. what I think works doesn't work. Being broke wasn't part of the plan. Being pregnant wasn't part of the plan. Becoming addicted wasn't a part of the plan. Having all this stuff and still going to bed empty wasn't a part of the plan. I never planned it this way. Some people blame God when it doesn't go their way, but can I tell you, you're putting the blame on the wrong person. What you're experiencing is the consequences of living a life apart from the covering of your Heavenly Father who loves you. There's a direct connection between what you are experiencing and the way you have treated and thought about God. Jesus goes on in the story. He says, so the younger son, he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. Feeding pigs is not a great job for anybody, but it's a terrible job when you're a young Jewish man who, if you even touch a pig, it makes you unclean. Now he's living with them and eating from the same trough as them. See it? That's the next part of the predictable pattern of a runaway. When you run from God, you end up embarrassed and ashamed. When you run from God, you end up saying, what are people thinking of me? How could I ever come home? I've gone too far. It's been so long. I'd like to come home, but look at what I've done. I'm so embarrassed. And the same enemy who was saying, come on, do it, do it, do it, is now screaming, look at what he did. Look at what she's done. She's so bad. They're so wrong. What a failure. What a screw up. We told you so. Maybe you've seen yourself in this story. Maybe your life has been like the younger sons. What does he do? Jesus says in verse 17 that when he came to his senses, there's this turning point in the story. He's feeding pigs, living with pigs. And in the middle of this mess, he comes to his senses. And maybe that's the moment that some of you are having right now. Maybe you're in the middle of a mess and you're wondering, how did I get here? And I wonder, what will it take for you to come to your senses? How much do you have to lose? How many bad decisions? How many lost relationships? How many consequences? How much suffering? Why not come home before it gets that bad? You may say, Adam, I'd like to come home, but how? How do I get back after all of this? Well, what does the son do? The son says to himself, he says, when he comes to his senses, I guess I'll go home. I guess I'll admit what I've done. I'll tell my father I'm not worthy. And he has this idea. Verse 17, when he came to his senses, he said, how many of my father's hired men, his servants, have food to spare? And here I am starving to death, living with pigs. I'll set out and go back to my father and I'll say to him, Father, I screwed up. I know I'm an idiot. I'm a moron. I was wrong. You can tell me you were right. I've sinned against heaven and I've sinned against you. I'm no longer worthy to even be called your son. I'm so messed up. I made such a fool of myself. You don't even have to make me your son. Just make me like one of your hired men. Just make me one of your servants. At least I'll have a roof over my head and food in my belly. And so he got up and he went to his father. There is this message in this story that no matter how far you've gone or how long it's been, you can always come home. You can always come home. It's never too late. No matter the decisions, no matter the consequences, no matter how much pain you've suffered, you can always come home. And that makes sense to us in our natural mind. We can just go home with our heads held low and I'm an idiot and I'm so sorry and please forgive me. I know I can't be your son anymore, but will you just make me a servant? I don't deserve it. I'm unworthy. I'm just begging. Will you please just somehow just make a little bit of space for me? But then Jesus says one of the most beautiful things in all of Scripture. He says that while he was still a long way off, his father, who represents God, saw him and was filled with compassion. You see, all it takes is for you to begin to turn towards home. And the father sees. And he's filled with compassion. And he ran to his son, who represents us. and he threw his arms around him and he kissed him. The Father wasn't waiting to punish the Son. The Father wasn't waiting to lecture the Son. The Father wasn't waiting to prove his point and say, I told you so. The Father was running to restore his Son. He just wanted to welcome him home. Over the next few weeks, we'll see what that restoration story looked like. But today, on this Easter Sunday, there is another runaway story. And it's not the story of a son who ran away from his father. It's the story of a father who ran towards his children. That's the story of Easter. The story of Easter is of a heavenly Father who so loved the world that he gave his only son, Jesus, and that Jesus desired so greatly to be reconciled with creation that he didn't run from a cross, he ran to the cross, that he left all of the safety and the security and the blessing and the glory of heaven to come to earth to live a sinless human life, not so that he could die for his own sins, but because the wages of our sin was death, he paid for the sins of all of us so that we can be forgiven. But that's not the end of the Easter story. 3 days later, Jesus rose from the dead. He conquered death, he conquered hell, he conquered sin, and he conquered the grave, so that if we would invite him to come into our life, if we would put our faith in him, if we would simply come home, he could offer us eternal life in heaven with him. You see, the empty tomb is God's declaration to every runaway that you have never run too far, that you can always come home, that the door is always open, and that the Father is watching and waiting.
I grew up with my grandma. I was moved around a lot. My aunt who helped raise me, she was giving me directions. I got something from her. But other than that, I felt that I could just do what I wanted to do because my aunt was letting me do that. Another thing was like my family, when we had the family functions, I started off, with the drinking the beer. I started hanging out with the wrong crowd, and I started hanging around this one particular guy, and I allowed myself to be involved with drugs. As I got older, trying new things, I was more of a follower than a leader. And I found myself just basically living just for drugs. In the beginning, it was fun. And the deeper that I kept doing it, the more I became dependent on it.
Lord, I confess that I've been a criminal. I've stolen your breath and sang my own song. And Lord, I confess that I'm far from innocent. These shackles I wear, oh, I bought on my own.
This one particular time, I had took some drugs from a guy. And later on that afternoon, when I came back around the same area that I was at, I got shot. Got out of the hospital. I was okay for a while, and then went right back into doing the drugs. I ran from years chasing the next high, thinking I was in control. The truth was, I was running from God, and I was completely lost. I didn't plan for my life to be like this, but little by little, it took me away from home.
Lord, I confess that I've been a prodigal, made for your house, but I walk my own road. And then Jesus came, and he tore down my prison walls. Death came to life when he called me by name. Scarlet sins had a crimson cross. He nailed my debt to that old rugged cross. An empty slave at the empty grave. Thank God that stone was rolled away.
I was just walking up and down Central Avenue in Maryland, and I seen a sign that said Teen Challenge. And at the bottom of it, it said Changing Lives. I went there because I was desperate. I was at rock bottom. I was actually running from God, but he didn't reject me. He allowed me to continue doing the things that I was doing because that's what I wanted to do. But he was there waiting for me with open arms to hold me, to comfort me, to welcome me back, to make me feel whole again. When I came home, I felt God put his arms around me. I was a changed person when I came back home. I felt that the blinders were off and I could literally see. Today I've been free from my addiction for 23 years. My marriage has been restored and my family has been healed. I'm thankful that I finally stopped running and I came home.
In heaven joins in with the glorious sound, and a great cloud of witnesses all gather round. 'Cause the ones that were lost are finally found. The Father is the one for me. This is our homecoming. Scarlet sins had a crimson cross. He nailed my debt to that rugged cross. An empty slave at the empty grave. Thank God that stone was rolled. Scarlet sins had a crimson cross. He nailed my debt to that rugged cross. An empty slave at the empty grave. Thank God that stone was rolled away.
Thank you for joining us online today. We hope this message has uplifted you and inspired you in your journey with Jesus. If you're local, we'd love to have you worship with us in person at either Greenfield or New Palestine campuses. At Real Life Church, we believe God has an incredible plan for your life to know God fully, find freedom from your past, and discover God's given purpose and make a difference in the world around you. For all the details of our service times, location, upcoming events, visit our website at reallifechurch.org.